Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Joining us now, he's the voice we'll be hearing as we're all watching this weekend. Kevin Burkhardt from Fox Sports with us here on the Hoffman Show. KB, you've known you're going to call this game for a long time. You obviously find out the participants with everybody else, but I mean, just how do you make sense of the fact that it's the Washington Commanders as one of the two participants, given, where we were a year ago as I was having you on the show to talk about them hiring Dan Quinn, a first-year head coach, and all the journey that it's been for Washington to get here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I know when we talked a year ago, I told you how much I like Dan Quinn, I like that hire, and I think he's done what he's always done, right? He's instilled this culture, and he's got guys that really play their tails off, and then they happen to draft a quarterback who is a star. So it's been a nice little confluence of events, but that's essentially where they're at. So, look, if you would have asked me 2.5 months ago, would I be surprised? Yeah, of course. Consider the Lions and Philly and where they rank. But, watching how they played really since that Week 16 comeback against the Eagles, I'm not. I mean, they're playing really good ball. They're playing the best ball of the year right now, and Jayden Daniels is absurd. So, I think it's, look, right now it's the two best teams the way they've been playing, so we'll see how it goes down.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Of course, 3 o'clock this Sunday on Fox. You get Kevin, you get Tom Brady, you get the whole crew. When you sit down with Jayden in these production meetings, or you have the calls and all the stuff you guys do to prepare, is there another guy in the league? Because, the benefit of what you've been able to do for a couple of years now, being at the very top of the pecking order, well-deserved there at Fox, is like you get great games every weekend. You get to talk to the best of the best. Is there a guy that Jayden reminds you of as you sat down and talked to him earlier in the year or in the process of getting ready for this game?
To be honest, this is the first time we had him was last week, so I hadn't talked to him at all. I mean, I talked to people, around him, and I obviously watched him in his interviews, but that was the first time I met him last week. And so that was great. First of all, I get a chance to do that. As far as who he reminds me of, it's a good question. I don't know if there's anyone that comes to mind right away about who he reminds me of. He's got this relaxed, quiet confidence. He is really down to earth and smart and polite, but you can tell, and there's a vibe there and a confidence there. And I think that's what shows on the field. We had this shot last week when, he was tearing it up, and we went to shot on the bench, and he's sitting there, and you couldn't tell whether he was in an NFC Divisional game or in a library. Like he's so cool. He's so cool in these moments. So yeah, personality-wise, no one jumps off the page that he reminded me of, but playing-wise, and his poise and his demeanor has really been something to watch.
I hadn't thought of a perfect comp for him, or not a perfect, but a really good comp for him on the demeanor stuff. There's like a little Mahomes there, whatever. But like the other day, Rich Eisen said Roger Federer, and I was like, oh, that's the one. Like you just see him do some of the craziest stuff you've ever seen, and then he just doesn't look like he's broken a sweat at all. And as you're calling the game, and you said it's you and Tom up there for the first time seeing him last weekend, and he's doing some of the stuff that he's doing. Like, what are the conversations like as you guys go to commercial and you guys are talking about just what you're seeing as he's just putting touchdown after touchdown after touchdown on the board in that second quarter?
Yeah, well, we had a conversation about exactly that, right? Because obviously, Tom can break down every play, and he did. And he was talking about some of his impressive decisions against the blitzes and things. But I said, there's a point in the game, and I just said, what do you think about his poise? And he was just really impressed. And the cool thing about Tom is he's not impressed, easily. He's not like every player in the league is great. Every play is great. He loves the league and he loves football, but, as you can imagine from quarterback play, it takes a little bit to impress him, and he was impressed. And I think that's been the thing. You can talk about so many things about Daniels, but his accuracy, his decision-making, but his poise, like in those moments, in the blitzing moments, in the fourth downs, it's never too big and too fast for him. And that's why nothing would surprise me. The way he handled the end of the game, his first playoff game in Tampa, just so cool and calm in that whole last-minute drive. And, they had no answer for him last week. When they ran that triple option, it was pretty hard to contend with. And, we'll see this week. Third time against Philly. First game, they weren't as successful, and he had a hard time. Last game, obviously, he was off the charts, 5 touchdowns. So I am kind of fascinated to see how it all goes down, but I don't think there's anybody in the league that's playing, as well as he is right now. I know that.
Kevin Burkhardt, Fox Sports, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So one of the, you just mentioned how calm and cool he was against the blitz. One of the things that I think is really fascinating about the Philly matchups this year is the lowest blitz percentage that Jayden faced all season was the Week 11 matchup against Philly. Philly then decided, after that worked so well, to blitz him at the second highest rate they blitzed anyone this year in that second matchup. Knowing, having called a bunch of Eagles games and knowing Vic Fangio and kind of what they have done to different teams over the year and over the years, do you have any early lean about how you think that they'll attack Daniels after Tom was imploring Aaron Glenn to stop blitzing last week?
Well, I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, look, Vic Fangio is the master at adapting. Not only in from matchup to matchup, but also in game, right? So I think the way that he was heating up in that game just kind of called for it to make something happen, and also the fact that Jalen Hurts was injured. I think he probably just felt like he needed to make something happen. And, like he has for every other blitz, Jayden Daniels played well against it. So I'm fascinated to see how they're going to play him this week. And I think the same thing goes for Cliff Kingsbury. How is he going to react to that? And I think when you look at it, basically for 6 quarters, the Eagles played really good defense against them. And for 2 quarters, Daniels shredded them a little bit. So I don't know. It's a fascinating matchup. We know the narrative, though, is that the Eagles don't want to let up the big play. They're the best in the league at not allowing the big plays. In second half of that game, they finally allowed some. So to me, that's the story. Can you, A, be patient enough to just deal with what they're giving you and go down the field and possess the football? And I think Washington can, because that's what they've done the last 2 weeks. That's kind of what they've had to do to win, is hold the ball and be patient and march down the field and take their time, if you will. And I think they need to do the same thing here. I don't see them going into this game getting 10 explosive plays on the D. I just don't see it. So I think the way that they're going to win is the way that they won last week. They put 45 points on the board. Now, look, they had big plays last week. I'm not saying they're going to have none. But I think their patience and their willingness to possess the ball and keep the Eagles' offense off the field. And then when the explosive opportunity comes, maybe against a blitz or a blown coverage, well, then obviously if you can take advantage of it, great. But I think it's the same formula for them. And we'll see how both sides react.
Yeah, getting to that game script against the Eagles has been so hard. They've trailed for like 5 minutes since mid-December. I think since they lost the Commanders game. I think they've trailed for like 5 total minutes or something ridiculous. And speaking of explosives, I want to get to Saquon in a second. But one other guy I wanted to ask you about for when Washington has the ball. Can you remember a story quite like Zach Bonds? A guy in a first year at a new position that is legitimately an all-pro?
First year, so a guy that, really was a special teams player, occasional pass rusher. And then he comes here and they move him inside where he hadn't played. And he's not only an all-pro, but he might be the defensive player of the year. He was voted a finalist for defensive player of the year. I mean, it's pretty amazing, right? It's also a pretty cool story on having an eye for talent and giving guys a chance and not to get, put into certain corners in their careers. I mean, he's legit. He's a freak. I mean, he's a big guy who can flat out fly. He's got great instincts. So it's pretty amazing. It's not a fluke. I think he just got put in the right spot. And, that happens a lot. But he is legitimately awesome, Craig. There is no fluke about it. He's put in the right position in the right defense and, playing somewhere that no one ever thought to play him, inside. Now, he'll get his pass rush reps and things like that, but he is a total all-around package, and it's the real deal. It's been a cool story.
Yeah, that speed for him is amazing. All right, to the Saquon of it all, because on the other side of the ball, it does seem on some level that simple. Can the Commanders be the team that held Saquon to like 40-something yards on 21 carries in the back, let's say, 3 quarters of that last Week 16 matchup? Or are they the team that gave up 107 yards and 2 touchdowns on the first 7 carries or whatever those numbers were? What's your bet this weekend of how the Commanders attack it and what kind of success they might have?
Well, look, I think you look at this. Here's how you look at this, right? No one has stopped them all year, and I really don't think that's changing. I think the reality is this: you don't want them running for 225 on you, and I think if you really load up everybody and try to load the box and just give every effort to stop them, at some point A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith are going to kill you if you do it, right? So you have to find a way. I know the passing game hasn't been big in these playoffs, but the reality is that's not how they win right now. They win by getting ahead, having the number one defense control the game, and then crushing you with Saquon in the second half. That's how they win. So can Washington get a lead, force them to go into the pass game a little bit? I think Washington, your goal is to not have Saquon have 200 yards and have 3 touchdowns over 40 yards. I think that's the goal. You keep him to 100 yards and, the big plays minimal. I think that would be a win-win. But I think the issue is everyone's saying, the pass game for Philly is not good. Like, I think it can be good. I just think the way they're winning is Saquon. So, do you want to have an effort to contain him while not singling A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith the entire game? Because I don't think that's a great formula either. So, it's delicate. The Eagles it's amazing. Like 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, it's the Jalen Hurts show, right? Well, they are now the number 1 defense in the league, and it's Saquon Barkley's team. The narrative has changed on them.
Yeah, I would rather lose with Jalen Hurts beating me at this point than with Saquon beating me. But I guess if you lose, then you still lose. With Jalen, last thing for you, Kevin, when you watch him now and you're watching the tape back from last week, the game back from last week, especially after he got folded up on, does he look like a different guy? Because the numbers suggest there's something that's not right there. He's not even pushing the ball down the field, nevertheless being effective while doing it. Do you see the same guy that you've covered since that 2022 magical run, or does he seem a little bit off to you for whatever reason right now?
I think if you just look at the overall pass numbers and say, man, they're way down. Well, it's because they're running back at 2,000 yards. You can't do everything in one game. Now, I will say this, Craig, I think it is a big factor whether he can move around on Sunday, because, when you look at Saquon's greatness and the Eagles offensive line, which is the best in the league, the other part of that is having the threat that Jalen Hurts can pull it and run like he did against the Rams last week for 40-plus yards and a touchdown. That's the threat. So if you take away that threat, that he can't do that, and I don't know if he can, with that left knee that you got bent back, that changes things a little bit. That's one less thing you have to worry about in your preparation and in your aggressiveness and flying to the ball. So I think in some way, I would think Washington would try to find out that answer early in the game and see exactly what he's capable of moving around with the football. Because if they don't feel he's able to move like he normally does, I think that changes how they go about making calls on the defensive side of the game. So to me, I think that's going to be really interesting early how they look and how they play Jalen Hurts.
I totally agree. Kevin Burkhardt be with Tom Brady, Tom Rinaldi, and Aaron Andrews Sunday in Philadelphia on Fox for the NFC Championship game. Kevin, always appreciate your time, sir. Have a great call and enjoy the heck out of it this weekend.
Greg, you're the best. We'll talk soon, man. Enjoy the game.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.